I found out why my neighbor never opened his curtains. The police told me not to look through that window. By then, I already knew what was standing inside. For almost 4 years, I lived across the street from a man named Walter. At least, I think his name was Walter. I only heard it once. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people waved when they drove by and brought in each other's trash cans during vacations. Nobody really talked to Walter. He wasn't rude, he just wasn't there. Every morning his car sat in the driveway. Every night the lights inside his house turned on, but nobody ever saw him. At first I didn't think much of it. Everyone has that one neighbor. The strange thing was the curtains. Every single window in his house was covered in not blinds, not shades, and heavy dark curtains, and all day and all night, summer and winter, didn't matter. They never moved, not once. The first time I actually saw Walter was during a thunderstorm. I was bringing groceries inside when I noticed someone standing on his porch. An older man, thin, gray hair, just standing there watching the rain. I raised my hand. He stared at me for a few seconds, then slowly went back inside. That was it, the only interaction we ever had. Months passed. Then one night something happened. I woke up around 2 a.m. Not because of a sound, because of a feeling. You know that feeling when something seems wrong but you don't know why? I looked out my bedroom window. The street was empty. No cars, no people, nothing. Then I noticed it. One of Walter's curtains wasn't completely closed. There was a gap, only a few inches wide. A thin black line in the middle of the window, and I remember staring at it. Something about it bothered me, but I couldn't figure out what. Then I realized, for the first time in 4 years, I could see inside, only a little. Just enough to make out part of a room. A lamp, a chair, a wall, nothing unusual. I went back to bed. The next morning, the gap was gone. The curtains were sealed shut again. I forgot about it. Until 3 nights later. The gap returned. Same window, same size. This time I grabbed my binoculars. I know that sounds weird, but curiosity gets the better of people. I looked through them. The room appeared empty, just furniture, dust, shadows. Then I noticed something near the back wall. A shape, a person, standing completely still. I lowered the binoculars, looked again. Still there, no movement, no reaction, just standing. I convinced myself it was a coat rack, or a mannequin, or maybe my eyes playing tricks on me. The next day I checked again. Curtains closed, nothing visible. But that night the gap appeared again. And the figure was still there, exactly where it had been before. Same position, same posture, perfectly still. I started paying attention after that. Every night around 2 a.m. the gap appeared, and every night the figure stood inside, motionless, watching the room. I never saw it move, not once. After about a week, I realized something else. The figure wasn't in the same spot. At first I thought it was, then I compared photos. I had taken pictures through the binoculars. Not because I was scared, because I wanted proof I wasn't imagining it. The figure was moving, not much, maybe a foot every night, but always closer to the window. I remember feeling cold when I noticed, the kind of cold that starts in your stomach. I stopped sleeping well. Every night I checked. Every night it was closer, and every night the gap in the curtain was waiting for me, like it wanted me to look. One evening I knocked on Walter's door. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. The house was silent. A few days later I tried again. Still nothing. But his car remained in the driveway. The lights still turned on every evening. The mail never piled up. Everything looked normal, except Walter was nowhere to be seen. The figure reached the front of the room. Now I could make out details. It looked human, very human. An older man, thin shoulders, gray hair, the same build as Walter. One night I looked through the binoculars and nearly dropped them. The figure had turned slightly. Not much, just enough for me to see part of its face. I wish I hadn't. Its skin looked wrong, gray, dry, like paper left in the sun. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I decided to call the non-emergency police line. I felt ridiculous doing it. What was I supposed to say? My neighbor has creepy curtains? So I didn't. Instead, I called for a welfare check. I told them I hadn't seen him in months. 2 officers arrived that afternoon. They knocked, waited, knocked again, no answer. Eventually they left. Nothing happened. But that night something changed. The gap in the curtain was wider, much wider. For the first time I could see nearly the entire room. The figure stood directly in front of the window, facing me. I froze. Even from across the street, I knew it was looking at my house, at my window, at me. Then I noticed something else. The room behind it wasn't dusty anymore. There were footprints, fresh footprints, leading toward the doorway, and only toward the doorway, not away toward it. I closed my blinds. For the first time since moving there. The next morning, there were police cars outside Walter's house. A lot of them. The street was blocked off. Neighbors gathered outside, and I walked over. One officer asked if I lived nearby. I said yes. Then he asked a question that made my stomach drop. When was the last time anyone saw Walter? Nobody knew. Hours later, the truth came out. Walter had died. Not recently. Months ago, possibly longer. A heart attack. They found him in an upstairs bedroom. What nobody could explain was how the lights kept turning on, or who had been bringing in packages, or why neighbors occasionally reported seeing movement behind the curtains. But that's not the part that still keeps me awake. Before the police left, I asked about the downstairs room, the room with the figure. The officer looked confused. What downstairs room? I described the window, the chair, the lamp, the person standing inside. His expression changed immediately. He asked how I knew about that room. I told him I had seen it through the gap in the curtain. The officer went silent. Then he said something I will never forget. There wasn't anyone standing in that room. I felt my chest tighten. He continued. The room was empty. I told him that wasn't possible. I had photographs, and I had seen the figure for weeks, every single night. The officer asked to see the pictures, and so I showed him. He stared at them for a long time. Then he called another officer over. Neither of them said anything. Finally, he handed my phone back. His face had gone pale. I asked what was wrong. He looked at me and said, "That's not the downstairs window." I remember laughing. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The room in my photos was the upstairs bedroom, the bedroom where Walter's body had been found. The same bedroom that faced the back of the house, not the street, not my house. The geometry made no sense. The angle made no sense. The photos should have been impossible. Before leaving, the officer gave me one piece of advice. He told me not to look through that window again. I asked why. He hesitated, then he said, "Because the closer we zoomed in on the figure." He stopped. I asked him what they saw. The officer looked back at Walter's house, then he answered, "It wasn't getting closer to the window." I felt sick. "What do you mean?" He looked directly at me. "It was getting closer to the camera." That night, every curtain in the house was finally opened. And for the first time in 4 years, every window was visible except one. The upstairs bedroom window, the one that should have been facing the wrong direction. That curtain was closed again, and sometime around 2 a.m., I noticed a gap